There's an old saying that goes, if you give someone rice, they'll eat for the day. But if you teach someone to grow rice, they'll eat for life.
My day job is to do research and teaching.
Michael Schlappe is a Marquette professor of biological sciences, but when he's not teaching, he's growing rice.
Part of my research is about rice. So I have a rice project. I'm a geneticist and a molecular biologist, and I try to understand the genetic pathways that lead some rice to be more cold tolerant than others.
Much of the rice in the U.S. is grown in warm, dry climate states like Arkansas, California, and Texas. But with growing droughts, the water needed for successful growth could become an issue in coming years.
Our prediction is most people predict that maybe in 10, maybe in 20 years, there won't be any more rice grown in Arkansas because there's simply no water. There's no groundwater or no rice in California. But Wisconsin has plenty of water still, right? But the problem is cold, right? The cold spring. So I married those two things. In general, rice is a very cold, sensitive plant. But in doing so, I transferred some of the research in my lab to the outside at Marquette. I built some rooftop small patties, and I tested things that I learned in the inside to the outside to see if some of those plants that I screened that were cold tolerant inside were also cold tolerant outside. And by doing so, by planting early, I realized that some rice variety that I tested hundreds of variety, can grow in Wisconsin. You can plant them early, they survive the spring, they make a flower like just right now in August, and then they mature the grain and they can be harvested by October. So that window was necessary.
Redstone rice is Wisconsin's first commercial-scale rice crop. It just so happens it's locally grown, harvested, and packaged near the Milwaukee area, and it's a bigger job than one man in a field can do alone.
So then I partnered with Fondi. Fondi has the mission to give access to farmers that traditionally don't have access to land. And this partnership started in about 2014, I believe. And then in 2015, we moved here to this nature preserve. And then I had great access to build patties also through a grant that I received from Marquette University.
I feel like a lot of things, we're at our best when things are happening organically and we're listening to the community. And this is something that's happened very organically. Starting in the 80s, there was a refugee Hmong population coming, or even earlier than that, to the United States and settling in Milwaukee, and very talented farmers who started growing and looking for places to sell, and they started to sell at the Fondi Farmers Market, and slowly built up the capacity and to where they are now, where the Hmong community is. Like I said, our vendors are probably over 90% Hmong, or identify as Hmong or Hmong American.
Now, farming at the preserve reminds Belia of her childhood in Laos that set her up for a lifetime of tending to the fields. In countries around the world, rice farming proves to be more than just a cash crop, but a means of preserving life and culture.
You know, there's obviously an economic component to it, but it's not solely economic. A big part is cultural. You know, many of the farmers when we're talking out here will tell me how, you know, one of the reasons they farm is to show their kids what it was like for them growing up, or to be able to grow the food and bring it home and prepare traditional meals and share with their kids and now their grandkids.
For Michael, it's about using Wisconsin's natural resources to give rice a new permanent home.
My big vision, maybe it's a kind of a crazy vision, is that maybe one of those days, the next decade or 2 decades, rice cultivation can be more predominant in Wisconsin in an area where we have no issues with water. Because water is really necessary for high yield in rice. You can grow rice without flooding, but the yield, in my experience, it's quite reduced, less than 50% of what you get with water. So that's, you know, I hope that maybe catches on, and with the help of Hmong farmers and maybe others, that rice will become, just like soybean or corn, a crop that can be grown in Wisconsin.
Hi, Portia Young here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us.